Good afternoon. Welcome back to the channel. This video is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Do your own research, make your own decisions. All right, guys, welcome back. So in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the ICP is behind argument, and there might be 2 or 3 more videos after this, just depending on how I'm trying to structure my position on this. But it's taken me about a week or so to kind of think through everything, and I've really been on the same general thesis for the last 2+ years. And so at different points in time, people will make certain positions or arguments about ICP. And it takes me a little while to kind of deconstruct what they're saying and to find all the flawed reasoning that they're using. And so that's what I'm going to be going over in this video. And again, I've been telling the same story for a long time. I'm more than happy to defend anything that I'm saying here against anyone, anytime, anywhere. Okay? Um, a lot of things sound great when you post them on Twitter, but they will probably sound very different when put against someone who has a counter position on some type of live debate format. So other L1s, so if you look at all the other layer ones in space, they didn't start out doing many of the same things that the people at DeFinity have with ICP. And just if you look at the things that have been developed on ICP so far and where certain things have been prioritized over others potentially. But if you look at other layer ones, they didn't start out spending a lot of time, energy, and resources doing network level integrations with other networks. And there's a reason for that. It's because they don't have the capabilities to do it. It's not that they probably wouldn't like to be able to do it. They just don't have the technical capabilities. And so when you're looking at what's happened with ICP over the last 2 or 3 years as far as development and which things have been prioritized over other things, this gets back into the whole position of saying ICP is behind, but you're using the other layer ones as for comparison, right? When they aren't the same things. And you're comparing where ICP is today. You have to take into account the different things that they've done up until this point. For instance, the Bitcoin integration, what they're doing right now with the Ethereum integration, the additional attention and focus right now on AI on chain. Those are things that other networks can't do. So let's just say, speaking hypothetically, that the DeFinity team were to, as opposed to taking the path that they have out of the gate, let's say that they were to have focused almost all attention and resources on retail DeFi. Let's just, speaking hypothetically. Okay, well, sitting here today, things might seem or look like they're where they're supposed to be compared to the rest of the industry, since we're primarily only talking about one use case, retail DeFi. But big picture, they wouldn't be nearly as well positioned for the bigger picture objective with ICP as they are right now. Because the Bitcoin integration is, guys, Kyle put out a tweet the other day about CKBTC. In my personal opinion, there's going to be some developments with CKBTC in the next 18 months. And I guess I could be wrong. I mean, Kyle kind of suggested there were some things coming in the next few months. But I mean, for me, and I've held this position for a long time, I do think CKBTC, if Bitcoin is going to continue to be adopted as legal tender in other countries around the world, I do think that CKBTC will be a solution, one of the main solutions, one of the 2 main solutions used in the world outside of Lightning. And I think that it's very realistic and maybe even probable that it will at least be adopted as legal tender in one of those countries in the next year and a half. Could be wrong on that, but again, people are dismissing very important use cases and excluding them just and hyper-focusing on retail DeFi. And even if you were to do that, if you look at the current status of retail DeFi right now, this does not look like a scalable model, in my opinion. And if you look at, I love this guy, very, very intelligent guy. I would recommend following him, Dagnum PI. And he's been covering DAG for a long time too, and probably more so than most other people online, and just a very smart guy. But he was just showing the failed transactions and everything, just at the scale that we're currently at right now. So networks have shut down, tons of failed transactions. There's been numerous different hacks in this space. All of these models require third-party middleware bridges in order to have any degree of interoperability. So even if you want to talk about DeFi, they're going to be confined to their own ecosystem. And if they want to have any interoperability with Bitcoin or with other networks, they're going to require third-party bridges. What does that do? Increase counterparty risk and increase the probability of hack, which we've already seen. And again, all of these issues have happened at the smallest scale imaginable. And this is going to scale to mass adoption in the face of cybercrime going parabolic. I'm not buying it. Okay. I'm just not buying, not for retail-based use cases. Again, enterprise, different story. But for retail-based use cases, I'm not buying it. And I think what's happening is there's like a prisoner of the moment type situation playing out right now. And it's like, I can be perfectly happy for, people making money in meme coins and or Solana or whatever else. And it has nothing to do with my big picture thesis though. It still doesn't change the underlying technical capabilities of the networks and what they can actually do. But just to blindly dismiss all of these other use cases into hyper-focusing on retail DeFi. And the reason why people do that is because there are certain metrics associated with DeFi that people elevate to like just the top of everything. And in some ways, it's understandable, right? But what's going to attract the most users right now in crypto? DeFi stuff, right? Because that's for the most part, all people see crypto as right now. They're not thinking about other use cases for the underlying technology, blockchain distributed ledger technology. So most people are just thinking about retail DeFi. And as far as how we use a lot of these technologies, we really don't. And for the most part, the only way we use these technologies is for different things like DeFi. And so that's probably why people hyper-focus on retail DeFi. But it's only one use case at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, too, it's going to be very much a commodity over time, meaning it's going to be incorporated into social media apps, messaging apps, games, right? SocialFi, GameFi. And so DeFi itself is just going to really be built into most everything, in my opinion, at least as if we're talking about swaps. And so that brings in a whole nother conversation. Okay, cool. You're looking at the current state of retail DeFi right now. Where is this going big picture? This is big picture. This is going to those type of services built in to social apps, games, so on and so forth. Messaging apps, things like OpenChat. And these other networks aren't positioned to do that. And if they do want to do that, they have to do it on big tech cloud. In an environment where cybercrime is about to go parabolic. And they're already having trouble at this scale. And so I very much think that we're experiencing a prisoner of the moment type situation right now. And again, I will defend this case against anybody. I can make a much stronger case in the case I'm going to make in this video, okay? This could really be a 3 or 4 part video series, because really what we're talking about is the sequence, the path that they've taken out of the gate, right? Now, if you're looking at the path that the people at dfinity have taken out of the gate, and you're looking at the development that's happened on ICP over the last 2-3 years, if you're just looking at that and comparing it to what other layer ones are doing, I would understand why it wouldn't make sense, because you would likely need to see how this will or could come together. And I'm more so talking about Web 2.5 to Web 3. I'm more so talking about at some point in time, front ends becoming decentralized, moving away from using big tech cloud for the front end. You would have to kind of see how this could, I'm not saying that it 100% will happen over time, but you would have to kind of see how that could come together in order to make sense of the different things that have happened over the last 2 or 3 years. Because if you don't see how ICP can over time absorb certain ecosystems, and through these network level integrations, technically, I mean, really anything could use ICP just like for their front end, but with these network level integrations, it's just going to enable another level of functionality and capabilities between the two networks. And you'd have to kind of see that vision to be able to make sense of the first 2 or 3 years worth of development. And you would have to appreciate the problems that are inherent with Web 2.5 and this current model to see the value in all of that coming together over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But if you're just looking at it in a vacuum, like if the whole like Web 2.5 to Web 3 using ICP as opposed to using big tech cloud for certain things, if that bigger picture outlook is not really like a real thing to you, then I get why people would come to the conclusion that they have over the last couple weeks. But had they solely focused on retail DeFi, the people at DeFinity, it might appear, like to retail, like they're in a good spot right now, but they wouldn't be any closer to their big picture objective, which is becoming the world computer over time. That's going to happen through scaling across all these other networks, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and the rest of them. That's going to happen through things like incorporating AI on chain and through building out all of these other scaling solutions that are going to make all of this possible at scale, where many networks are struggling with the current volume today at the lowest amount of adoption imaginable in all reality. I would argue retail DeFi is an overvalued criteria in its current form. This is only one use case. And yes, I understand why the retail space obviously focuses on retail DeFi, but at the end of the day, it is one use case. And in my opinion, the others are not set up to do this use case at scale. They're not set up to do this use case at scale. They can't operate on other networks. They have to use, so it's like that's automatic right there. Like if you're expecting one of these other networks to do this type stuff at scale, how are they going to have any interoperability with other networks? They're going to have to use third-party middleware. On top of that, too, as they scale, they just become a bigger and bigger target for exploit, right? And they're already having trouble supporting the volume right now. And networks have shut down numerous times. So, it just happens to be the use case that retail is most involved with because of trading and meme coins. Because of trading and meme coins, two things that, in my personal opinion, have been socially engineered in this space in order to promote that to retail. Trading and meme coins. Let's look back at where the meme coin craze started. Elon Musk, right? And now meme coins are an entire industry almost. And let's look at why so many people are hyper-focused on trading, because it's promoted throughout the entire industry. Despite the fact that if you were to just talk to different people that you know and or just different people in crypto, it's the percentage of those people that have any experience trading is such a small, I mean, especially before they got into crypto, it's such a small percentage of people that it's so disproportionate when you see how many people are promoting trading in the crypto space. And it's because it is a socially engineered thing, because they want people trading, they want people getting in and out of positions. The more that you're tuning in, the more that you're transacting, right? You become, the more that you can get people to do that at scale, you just increase revenue, right? I mean, there's a lot of incentives why they would want to promote trading and meme coins. So Yeah, it's if that's the best you got, I mean, it's like they focused on retail DeFi because that's all they have. Okay. That's what people don't get. And they're not even positioned to do this at scale. That's all they have in all reality, outside of just being a basic database ledger system, pay rails for some type of enterprise system. Outside of that, all they really have is retail DeFi. All they really have is trading shitcoins. They don't have one of the largest precious metal refiners in the world tokenizing their gold on their network because you can't store that type stuff on chain with these networks. So this leads to the perception of adoption in a thriving ecosystem. And when I say the perception of adoption, yes, technically adoption, people come on the network, have a new wallet, so on and so forth, right? But what are they coming on the network for? To speculate on shitcoins. That's it. That's the reason why users are coming on is important too. Okay, because there's sustainable use cases and there's use cases that are not sustainable. In reality, it is one use case. They are only behind on one, quote unquote, behind on one use case. Look at all of these other use cases. So you could say that they're behind when it comes to DeFi, right? But again, you would have to assume that this is going to be a sustainable model. You would have to assume that there's a bigger picture with this model, and I don't see it because they can't operate on other networks. It's not a secure model. They're having trouble at the scale that already exists right now, and they're facing a skyrocketing general rate of cybercrime over the upcoming years. And this hasn't even gotten into AI. But because of the market, right? Because the price shoots up. It's like that's price is shooting up, retail DeFi, this is all that matters, so on and so forth, and people become prisoner of the moment. I think that's what's been happening in recent weeks, in my opinion. Tons of failed transactions, network halts, insane fees with Ethereum at this scale, right? I've had tons and tons and tons of issues at this scale. This does not take into account the security risks involved with Web 2.5 model and retail specifically. Again, when I'm talking about the Web 2.5 model and the issues with it, I'm talking about retail-based applications. A lot of these other layer ones, they'll fit in fine in the enterprise world, in my opinion. And if layer twos need to be created for those certain layer ones that are being used, they will be. And I think the institutions would probably just do that themselves and or outsource it to a third party. They would oversee the implementation, the maintenance, everything, and the general security and upkeep of the network. So, they're positioned to be able to do that. Some tiny little 3-person Web3 startup with very limited resources is not positioned to do that. Okay. ICP took a different path out of the gate because it has different functionality. All right. The reason why these other layer ones aren't working with Singularity Net right now to figure out a way to run AI models with smart contracts is because they can't do it. That's why. That's why they're not spending a lot of time, energy, and resources in that department because they can't do it. Why aren't they prioritizing network level integrations with Bitcoin? Because they can't do it. That's why. All of these things that dfinity has been doing that people just dismiss, and that's really what it is. People are dismissing all of those things that have happened that nobody else can do as if they have no value associated with them just because the market isn't moving right now and because prices lagged and there was a long, down only bear market. But that doesn't eliminate the value and the value proposition of that use case and of the inherent functionality that ICP has and the work that dfinity has done to get it to this point. Looking at retail DeFi in its current form as the end-all be-all is a flawed methodology. You would have to assume that this model is going to scale to mass adoption or that it could. And, At the end of the day, the use case, the adoption, all the adoption that's coming on, they're coming on to trade shitcoins. So I'm looking at this, and guys, I don't know as far as like timeline, and I do expect other technologies to be used on the infrastructure front for things like data storage, for things like compute. I think it will be a host of different technologies used over the next, 4 or 5 years. I do think that over the next 15 years, it'll ICP will just slowly start to suck everything in. But I do expect other technologies to be used too. And it's just as far as I don't think that there's going to be like a point in time where all of this just happens like, okay, now this is going to happen. I think it's just going to be an incremental thing. After the Ethereum integration is fully complete and there's CK twins for ERC20s, at that point in time, I would expect to see, within 2 years of that being complete, I would expect to see examples of Ethereum-based applications moving their front end to ICP. So if we don't see that, we'll revisit that situation at that point in time. But that's what I would expect to start to see. And we start to migrate more so for a lot of these retail-based applications and use cases, we start to migrate to an end-to-end on-chain model. But the infrastructure needs to be in place. The network integrations need to be built out. The scaling solutions need to be put in place, right? And that's still happening right now. I would argue, so as ICP is continuing to work on all these different things, all that's going to happen is cybercrime is going to become a bigger and bigger threat. And AI is going to make it harder and harder to know what's real and what's not online. All of that's going to increase in the next 2 to 3 years. Cybercrime and the AI threat. They're only, look at it as a trend, as a trajectory. It's going to go up and to the right, or whichever direction. This is kind of reversed, I think, but it's going up and to the right. Look at the trend. Cybercrime, AI being a threat. Both of those are trends, and they're going to continue up and to the right. And at some point in time, in my opinion, they're going to force a shift in different things. I would argue that ICP is going to be positioned perfectly. I would argue they're positioned perfectly right now. Guys, pause real quick. Let's just say that the World Wide Web Consortium does give ICP credential support. Let's just say that in the next 2 or 3 years, there is more of a demand for identity solutions online because of artificial intelligence and because of cybercrime. Let's just, all that would really have to happen is ICP creates or is one of the best destinations for an identity solution and or just credential support through the World Wide Web Consortium. If they're one of the leading technologies in the world for a solution like that, that's the biggest catalyst. That's the biggest network effect that you can imagine. The World Wide Web Consortium is the organization that creates the standards for the web. DeFinity has already partnered with them, and Dominic has floated the idea, we'll wait and see what happens, of getting credential support from the World Wide Web Consortium. And we're in a world where cybercrime is going to the moon, and AI is going to make it so you don't know whether what you're seeing is real or not, probably within the next 2 or 3 years. And so it's not out of the realm possibility. In my opinion, it's probably the most likely scenario that there will be different types of identity solutions, identity verification, content authentication type changes happening just as far as when it comes to the standards on the web. That would be the biggest catalyst, the biggest onboarding event, the biggest network effect imaginable. And see, people just don't even think about this. It's like it is solely retail DeFi. What I just went over about the identity solution, all of these things that I'm going over, or about Bitcoin, scaling Bitcoin payments, and CKBTC becoming potentially legal tender at some point in the next 1.5 to 2 years, if Bitcoin continues to be adopted as legal tender. It's not out of the realm possibility. In my opinion, it's it very well may happen. I mean, nothing's ever a sure thing. This is not financial advice, but they've already been adopted in Lugano. In my opinion, they have the best solution, and it's really just them and Lightning competing in the space right now. So I think that as this progresses, they're going to be positioned perfectly to start absorbing a lot of these different applications where the application moves their front end to ICP. I don't think it's going to happen this week or this month. I think it's going to be an incremental process. But I think they'll be in a perfect position to absorb many of these applications, many of these users, developers, liquidity, because for any of these other layer ones, they would stay serving the exact same purpose they're already doing right now. When I say absorb users, liquidity, all that is, I'm talking about from big tech. I'm not talking about from these other networks. They do so little already that they can just continue doing what they're already doing and use ICP instead of big tech. Why would they do that? Well, I would argue they're going to be forced to find better solutions over time. Not today, not this week, not next month, but as this progresses, as ICP continues to build out their infrastructure, more scaling solutions, more network level integrations, they're going to be positioned perfectly, in my opinion. So fast forward a couple years from now, and all the meanwhile, again, cyber AI, the threat just continues. It just increases. So fast forward 2 or 3 years, and assuming all those other things are built out, I think they're going to be in a great spot. I think they're in a great spot right now, okay? Because right now, realistically, I think that they're the best scaling solution for Bitcoin payments in the world. And I think that it's very possible that CKBTC could become legal tender in the next year and a half, 2 years, in at least one country. On top of that, too, potentially credential support through the World Wide Web Consortium. On top of that, too, real world assets on chain, already working with Metalore, potentially more things happening with Origin. There's probably AI on chain. I mean, I think they're positioned perfectly right now. But as far as for like the retail DeFi situation, I think they are in the process of positioning themselves to really take so many applications, so many users, so much liquidity, so much everything. It just takes time. Why didn't it take time for these other networks? Blah, 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 because they can't do everything that ICP can do. There would be no reason for them to be doing AI on chain because they can't do it. There's no reason for them to do a network level integration with Bitcoin because they can't do it. And so they went straight to the shitcoin casino, which is perfectly fine. To each their own, right? But that's one use case. And it looks like it's going to have a hard time scaling right now. So even if you see the current retail DeFi as the end all be all, look at all the other use cases traditional L1s can't do. Scaling Bitcoin, real world assets on chain, alternative to AWS for a front end, AI on chain, data storage. Making retail DeFi your main/only criteria will prove to be a flawed methodology, in my opinion. And so this individual asked, and this wasn't like I like this guy, but is there a truth to the claim the longer ICP stays ignored, the farther ahead the competition will get? And I said, no, not in my opinion. And I don't view them as getting far ahead, right? Because I look at it by use case. I think other people are looking at, you know what I'm saying? It's like you're looking at like, oh, this many users. Okay, again, what are those users coming on the network to do? Trade shitcoins. Is that a viable long-term business model, especially when all these transactions are failing, especially when the network is shut down numerous different times, especially in the face of cybercrime going parabolic? Is that a realistic, viable, big picture business model? In my opinion, no. So when you're talking about them getting further ahead, you really got to put this in perspective. It's one use case, okay? All right. So I said, no, not in my opinion. They are only ignored by retail, not by institutions. The Web 2.5 model won't scale for retail-based apps. In my opinion, maybe it will, maybe it won't. I think it's going to have a lot of issues. It will for enterprise because they have security infrastructure in place. They can build out the scaling solutions themselves, oversee implementation, maintenance, everything. But for retail-based apps, they're essentially the biggest targets on the internet right out of the gate. And they don't have hundreds of billions of dollars for the above mentioned resources, like the security infrastructure, like the ability to build their own scaling solutions, oversee implementation, maintenance, all these other things. They don't have those resources. And they can't operate on other networks, so third-party middleware is going to be required if they want to have any degree of interoperability with Bitcoin or with other networks. So that's just going to increase the counterparty risk and the security concern. Other L1s have had issues handling the volume with the current user base at the lowest level of adoption possible. So just imagine this with 10x the amount of volume and users. And even 10x the amount of volume and users still wouldn't be mass adoption, okay? Yeah. Other L1s didn't start doing a lot of these things out of the gate because they can't do it, okay? There would be no reason for them to be doing these things because they can't. And this gets back into the conversation when people try to suggest that ICP is behind because of what's being built first, because they're doing a broad range of different things as opposed to like focusing on a couple different things like DeFi or maybe certain wallets, right? Omitting the value associated with what was being built first. See, it's like you can critique ICP and say, well, they should be further along or they're far behind on DeFi, whatever. Okay, you're dismissing the other development that's happened and the use cases that have spawned off of that and the value associated with them. Like, for instance, the Bitcoin integration and ICP potentially being the Bitcoin scaling solution to take Bitcoin to a world currency and how big of a deal that would be. Just as one use case. And or AI on chain and or just an identity solution. These are giant use cases that have huge implications that could lead to tons and tons and tons of network effects and new users. And so, and these are use cases that these other networks don't have. That these other networks that are focusing 100% of their resources on retail DeFi because that's all they fucking have, these are use cases they don't have. But once ICP is done building everything else out, ICP is going to be able to do DeFi better than all of them as well. Light years better than them. This is just not the general stage that we're in right now, which is why I would argue people are just being prisoner of the moment. But people are omitting the value associated with things like being a Bitcoin scaling solution, having AI on chain, being one of the main identity solutions globally, with support through the World Wide Web Consortium, assuming that does go in that direction. All these other networks can't do any of these things. To assume they're not going to matter, why? Why would you assume that they're never going to matter? Because people in retail aren't saying they're mattering right now, because the price isn't shooting up right now. All of this could get priced in within 2 weeks. All of this, I always do it. I always wait till the very end to say it. All of this could be priced in 2 weeks. You could sit there and be convincing yourself that they're years behind. They're years behind. And all this could get priced in 2 weeks. So I would try your best to look at this as a comprehensive picture, because if you're narrowly focusing on any one thing, retail DeFi, you're going to miss probably the most important parts and the most important points when it comes to really assessing where everything is right now. That's all I have for this video. Thank you everyone who has liked, share, and subscribed. This was not financial advice. I welcome all rebuttals, pushback, counter arguments. Let me know. Let me know. Because I will stand by what I say and I will defend my position against anybody, anywhere, anytime. That's all I have for this video. Thank you, everyone who has liked, share, and subscribed. Take care. Have a good day. I'll see you in the next video.